Okay, so in 2009, I was working 70 to sometimes 80 hours a week. I was, from the second I woke up in the morning till the minute I went to bed at night, I was into my email, I was into my phone, scheduling with buyers, sell everything. It was just, my life was consumed by real estate. I had no time for anything else. I was doing that 7 days a week. If I was lucky, sometime I would take maybe a Saturday or a Sunday. And it was frustrated. I was starting not to like the business. I hired my first business coach, John Alexandrov, and he helped me to get control of my schedule. That was the first thing we worked on. I was making good money. I was making about 350,000 or 330. And I was making good money, but based on the amount of hours I was working and the amount of time I was committing, it wasn't even worth it. So we looked at all the things I was doing. We looked at my schedule, and the first thing we focused on was setting some standards. But what I want to let you guys know is I joined Genius Network last year, and Joe Polish is the founder of Genius Network. And he has a metaphor he calls ELF. And I want you guys to write this down. ELF, E-L-F. And everybody follow along with me. If you don't have the worksheet, just write it on a piece of paper. ELF, E-L-F.
Oh.
ELF, like Santa Claus, ELF, like the helper.
One of my favorite movies.
Okay, nice. So ELF stands for easy, lucrative, and fun. So if we're in a career, we have a job, whatever it is, we should be looking for ELF, easy, lucrative, and fun. So what most of us have, and what I had back then, is what we called half. Okay, it's the opposite of ELF. My job, my career was hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. That was how I spent my days. Hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. Okay, write that down. Half, H-A-L-F. So what John and I did was, the first thing we did was we looked at everything I was doing, and we said, okay, we need to now set some standards for the business. So I want you all to be thinking about this from the same perspective. It may not be exactly the same as me, but where in your business can you relate? So the first one is, the first thing for standards is determine standards for your schedule. So do you want to work fewer hours and have more personal time? So when I hired my first business coach, I already talked about that. One of the things we decided that I was going to do was I was going to stop working on Saturdays before 11 a.m. or after 5. And then on Sundays, I wasn't going to work before 12 and after 5. That was something I put in place right away. It was a standard I created. The other thing I was going to do is I was going to take one weekend off a month. One weekend a month, I would just not answer my phone. The calls would go to voicemail. My assistant would deal with that. So for me, that was a standard that I created for myself right away. And I also created a standard that I would not check emails, and I still do that till this day. I do not check emails before 8:30 a.m. I get up at 4:45 and I do not look at my emails until 8:30. When I'm looking at emails, I am under the control of somebody else's agenda and what somebody else wants me to do, instead of being in control of my own schedule, because I'm responding to all the email requests I get. So those were some things that I put in place right away. Another simple thing I started doing in my personal life was I stopped mowing my lawn. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what I'd like to do is, Debbie, is there something, when you think about a standard for your business, let me ask you this question. If anybody, and this is being recorded, so I hope it's okay if I share it. I want you to know it's being recorded, so if you don't want me to share it, then let me know, and just don't say anything that you don't want shared, because I'm going to use this on YouTube, by the way, as a training video. So is there anything in your business right now that's causing frustration? So either Debbie, Scott, anybody want to answer that question? Harold,
anything right now?
For me, it's letting go of the job in the evening and not thinking about it. Just letting go and completely letting go of it so that I can enjoy my life after, after my work is done.
Okay,
And I'll be honest with you, I think if I, just being honest, knew that I had paid attention to, kept my schedule and done what I should do all day, then I think I wouldn't feel that I need to do that in the evening. If I find I'm not disciplined and my day gets interrupted by many different things, and then I'm always feeling like I should have done more, and so I continue to do more or not let go of it. So for me, it's a matter of discipline, I think, to straighten that
well,
out.
so
that I can let
discipline,
go.
discipline can be a tough word. So for right now, we're not worrying about any discipline, any accountability, any way
Okay.
we're gonna do it. All we're doing is setting some standards for ourselves, saying, okay, this is the way I want it to be. We can talk about the other stuff later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So right now, I like where you went with it because that's a very common one, Debbie. A lot of us are working a lot more hours than we want to. We're not shutting down at a certain time. So we're gonna use that one for the first one. So what I'd like everybody to do right now, whether you have the worksheet or you're doing it on a piece of paper, is write down a standard for yourself. The standard could be, this is when I want to stop working. Okay, I want you to create a quick schedule, like this is when I'm done for the day with real estate. Like a time. Okay. What time, anybody, Debbie, Harold, what time did you guys put down?
Well, I put 6 PM, but I probably should have put earlier, but I did. I put 6.
Well, no, 6, if 6 works for you, that's fine. It doesn't have to be earlier, but do a time, like I actually put 7 because I knew if I tried to do before 7, it was probably unreasonable for me. Because I like working, I like making money, right? So, but 7, I can adhere to that. Does that
Okay.
make sense? So for me,
Yeah.
I'm not saying for you to do that. I'm just saying that that's what worked for me. So
Right.
if you think 6 is doable, then keep 6. If you think, but what we're trying to avoid is being on our phone at 9, 10 at night, checking emails, doing all this stuff, waking up at 6 a.m. and it's the first thing we do is get into our emails. So one of the assignments you're going to have is for next week, I want you to bring this back with, I want to know your schedule for the time you're waking up, as well as your weekend schedule. Like I told you on the weekends, on Saturdays, I refuse to do anything before 11 a.m. And it makes it so easy because when somebody wants to meet with me on a weekend, I just say, okay, great. I've got availability at 12, or I could do 2. Which of those is going to work better for you? And there's no complaint, right? And if they have a problem with that, then that's their problem. And it's not somebody I'm going to work with. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to jump to the next one. The next one is expectations. So standards, I believe this is my quote. If I created a quote for the world, it's this: standards are on the inside, expectations are on the outside. Meaning when I set standards, that's what I'm setting for myself on the inside. Now I want to share those with the outside world as expectations, meaning, okay, if you're going to go into business with me, you're going to do work with me, here are the expectations. So once we've determined the standards now, we need to communicate them with our clients before taking on a client. So the first thing to do is do a needs analysis. Excuse me. So if you're going to go to work with a seller or a buyer, you should be sitting down with them, having a needs analysis and making sure this is somebody that is okay with me not emailing them before 9 a.m. or after 7 p.m. or I'm not going to be with them on Saturdays or Sundays after 5 o'clock, right? So those are the standards, are the expectations that we're gonna set with other people. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So Harold, what are your thoughts when I talk about expectations?
I think it's on a case-by-case basis for some people. You have to have some flexibility, but for the most part, the standards need to be in place and the expectations need to be in place. And there's every so often you might have to negotiate with the seller or somebody because their schedule might not align with yours. So I'm flexible with that. But as far as the boundaries on what you're trying to do, it makes complete sense because then it forces you to follow through and not, prolong your day or just, you could have taken care of it earlier and now you're more forced into following what you're planning on doing, which gives you more time for freedom.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes, there's an example of a guy that was traveling and he had a expensive house and he needed me to meet with him at like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Well, it made sense. I made an adjustment. That was not the standard. That was the exception.
Yeah.
Right? So I met with him that time. It worked out great, but I'm not doing that for everybody. He had a situation where he had to travel. If I said no, I was going to lose like a $600,000 listing. Didn't make sense. It made sense for me to make an adjustment. So of course. So I want you to think about some expectations now. So for me back in the day, my wife was on my team and I love my wife a lot. But, in the middle of the day, my wife would come in. I'd be, in the middle of my working and doing my thing. And she'd be like, hey, pop down. Hey, how's it going? And I'm like, yeah, it's going good. And I'm like in the middle, like I'm getting anxious because, I'm in the middle of email. I got to stop, I'm doing my thing. And then we just had a talk and we said, you know what, let's during the day, we both love each other, but
Yeah.
let's set an expectation that, we can, maybe if we decide we'll have, because we have lunch a couple times a week, we'll meet for lunch. But other than that, unless there's an emergency or something, we just, chill. We give each other the space they need to get to be productive. Does that make sense? And I don't want anybody to think I'm a jerk, but that is like how serious we have to take that. Same thing with my admin. My admin on my team knew, we set expectations. This is how we communicate with our sellers. This is what they should expect. This is what I expect in the morning when I come in.
Mhm.
That stuff has to be set in order to have a real business. That's my opinion.
Hey, David, it's almost like there's a continuity to whatever you're doing at that moment. And when you get these interruptions or you're forced to get out of what you're doing, then you lose that momentum. You might lose the creativity.
Oh,
Because that
100%.
thing-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So now I'm going to jump into determining your hourly rate. So this was an exercise that John did with us when I first started coaching with him. We went to an event in Florida and there were about 15 people in a room and all top producers. And when we all just kind of did an estimate, and you guys anybody can do this. It's going to be an estimate. It's not an exact science unless if you know the numbers, great, but figure out, take approximate how many hours you worked last year. Okay. And last year was COVID, so it might've been a weird year, but just take your approximate hours of, what you work per week and then determine how many weeks a year you're working. So is it, if I work 40 weeks, right? So based on hours worked per week, right? And it'll tell you how many hours a year. And then all you need to simply do is divide that by how much money you're making. Right? And that tells you your hourly rate. So when I did this exercise with John, I realized I was making about $105 an hour. So, I mean, you could say that's not terrible, right? But I was giving away my life for that. And then the thing is, I was in a room with other people that were doing about the same volume as me. Some of them doing more, some of them doing a little less. They were making $400 or $500 an hour because they had leveraged their business. They had good support systems. They had, they had teams. So they weren't putting in as much time as I was. So their hourly rate was a lot higher. So so the next step with this exercise is figure out what is my hourly rate. And I already gave you the formula for that. And I'll share this video with you again so you can get it. But it's all you need to do, figure out about how many weeks I work. And then based it by the hours. Okay, hours per week. And then it gives me an estimate. And then I take that. So if I made 150,000 last year and I worked, 800 hours or whatever it is, then I know how much I'm making per hour. Again, it's not an exact science, but it gives you a starting point. So then the next step is super, super cool. Does anybody know your hourly rate? Like Deb, do you, I mean, it's, you don't have to, nobody has to share this unless you want to. I mean, I don't know if you know your hourly rate. Back then mine was up. My hourly rate right now, I'm not there yet. The goal is 800 an hour. That's my goal. So I know that number. It's everywhere. It's on my wall. It's on my vision board. It's on my, it's my coaching model, 800 an hour. So does anybody want to share what your goal hourly rate is, or what you know what you did last year roughly? You don't have to, by the way, just say no. All right, I'll take the silence as a no. Does anybody want to share their goal hourly rate then? Because I think having the goal is a great, is a great tool, right?
How about 300 an hour?
Okay, awesome, perfect. So now you know what you can focus on, and you'll figure out how to get there. So the next thing now is to make a commitment. This is number 4. I know my hourly rate. I'm crystal clear. Now I make a commitment that I'm never going to do anything less than my hourly rate. Meaning, if I put a transaction under contract, and I know I have somebody, like, I know I'm making $105 an hour. I put a transaction under contract. If I decide, and I know that I have a TC that will do that work for me for $25 an hour, and she's an absolute rock star, better at it than I am, as a matter of fact, and I don't have her do it, and I spend the 3 hours doing my paperwork to try to save $75, basically what I did was I just cost myself 200 and what is that? It's $80 times 3, 240. It cost me $240 to use her to do my paperwork. That's the way we have to look at it. And here's an example in my personal life. We were having a landscape. I mean, after I got a landscape company. Before this, I was mowing my lawn. I went to Home Depot. We built a house. I went to Home Depot. I bought a lawnmower. And, I was mowing my lawn every other week. I was mowing it, and, it was taking me 2 hours. By the time I was done, between showering, everything, getting ready, it was about 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours from start to finish, putting away the lawnmower, the whole deal. So that was costing me about 5 to 6 hours a month to mow my lawn. What I realized is I could hire a landscape company. They charged me back then. I didn't have a huge yard. I mean, I had a decent sized yard, but I didn't have a huge yard for a walking mower. They were charging me $35 for every other mow. So that meant for $70, I just got 6 hours of my time back on the weekends. Think about that. So again, that was the aha moment for me. Like, I will never mow. Like, I don't even own a lawnmower right now, which sometimes is a problem because I actually want to fix some things, but I probably need to just, I do have a weed whacker, but I don't even like to use it. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? But it's reality. Like, I can't go out there and do that. Even if I'm on a Saturday and I want to just hang out with my daughters and spend time with my daughters. Do I want to spend time with my kids and enjoy that time with my kids, or do I want to be out mowing lawns and doing yard work, right? And if you love yard work, then hey, don't get me wrong. I know some wealthy people that like yard work, like mowing their lawn. And if that's the case, then no issues whatsoever. I'm just using this as an example.
I think learning the proper tools to use, and like lately with Paul and I, we've just been really working on the technology and the courses we're taking and different things like that to help leverage ourselves as well. There's so many avenues to go to help leverage, and maybe draw on a map of those tools that you want to implement to help leverage yourself. Obviously, to earn that amount that you want to earn.
100%. But the first step is creating the awareness here. So setting the standards, right? Then you're going to set some expectations with people. You'll come back to that. Figure out your hourly rate, right? So you're going to write down your expectations. You're going to come up with your hourly rate. And then you're gonna come up with a list of things that you are gonna give up. So let's share. I'd like to hear from everybody that's on, like, what is something that you're doing now that you know is not worth your hourly, like your best, it's not your best, highest and best use of time.
Just did my lawn on Monday. It took 2 hours.
Okay, fair enough. There you go. So I don't know what it would cost to get a landscaper to do that, but you could give that away, right? And then that would be 2 hours you could use lead generating, 2 hours you could be going on a listing appointment. There's other things you could do with that 2 hours, right?
Yep.
I'll tell you what I did was I made sure, I actually made a commitment to myself back then that I gave away some stuff during the week. Like in the beginning, like if I said, okay, I'm going to use this TC to do my paperwork, I would say, I'm going to spend an hour now lead generating. Just because I knew in my mind that I was buying that, extra time. So I wanted to utilize it. So I wasn't just going to go sit around in the office, and go into the lunchroom and chill out. I was going to utilize that time. Otherwise, I might as well just do the paperwork myself, right?
Right.
All right, anybody else have an example of a better use of time?
I'm thinking now everything I do throughout the day over the next few days, I'm going to be thinking about this, David.
Yeah, well, good.
Darn pool, the different things, Well,
It's
I
the
bought a
thing-
robot. The best investment I ever made. People, if you have a pool, that'll save you hours.
Oh, pool for the
Yeah, in the
robot?
office,
Pool?
making your
Oh, that's a good
calls.
idea. I need
Oh,
one
yeah.
of those. That's actually, thank you. You just gave me an awesome tip. I have a pool. I've never had a pool. Last year, we bought a house with a pool.
David, I saved so many hours and I fought buying it because it was extremely expensive for a good one. And I just go turn it on and my pool stays perfect all
Oh,
summer.
that's amazing.
I just go
How-
out throughout the
I-
day, keep turning it on. It does everything. And
I
it's the
love it.
best investment I've ever made. I could do a commercial.
Thank you. That's a phenomenal one. I love that. Okay, I love it. Because I
Well,
have
some of the
that
things-
issue right now.
Take a little bit of investment, but pay off
Okay,
tenfold.
all right. Anybody else want to share one that they have before we move on to the final step?
I feel like I'm kind of like Debbie, I'm going to look at my schedule over the next couple of days. But I mean, for me, I have been talking about like just doing meal prepping. So, and that just flows over into other aspects of life of eating healthier, but doing the meal prepping that takes time during the day from me, each day. So I'm thinking I'm like a Sunday night, just doing some meal prep.
Okay, that's a good idea. I know some people are using those services that just deliver all your meals, but I don't know. I have not used them.
Yeah, the meal prep is really a good one because, which I like your idea, by the way. But I think that's something I need to implement more. So save time. If you have everything out anyway and you're cooking, cook extra of the same meal since you have all the stuff out and freeze it, have it ready.
Yeah, because it easily just, thinking of yesterday, it took me a couple hours just, prepping, preparing dinner, cleaning, doing dishes after. So it's just, or loading the
Well, you're
dishwasher.
going-
So
Right. Well, you're going to buy all the ingredients for that specific meal and you're cooking it. You might as well cook extra. I had 7 kids, so I was very into the cooking extra. As a matter of fact, it's been hard to not cook extra. So that's been my challenge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let me jump to the 5th one now, and then we'll do some takeaways after. So the 5th one now is, okay, we've set some standards. Again, standards are on the inside, expectations are on the outside, right? The standards I set for myself internally, expectations, now I'm sharing that externally with the world. So I'm taking control of my schedule back. Number two is what? I'm sorry, number 2 is set expectations. Number 3 is determining the hourly rate. So now I know, okay, I want to figure out what am I making per hour? And then I want to increase that. And at the same time, I want to make sure I'm not doing anything less than that. So I make that commitment to never do anything less than. And then finally, now that I'm really clear, I go and I create my time blocked calendar. And by the way, if you see there's a link at the bottom here, it says timemastery.davidihill.com. You have access to my training, my membership. There's a great video in there. It's a 10-minute video that'll walk you through. There's the time blocked calendar here. You'll see the link. Time block, it'll walk you through setting up a time block calendar. Then there's another video, Time Mastery, that talks about some of the stuff we're talking about here. So those videos are all part of the membership site that everybody here has access to. But now, once you're clear on all this, you're going to go and you're going to create a schedule in your Google Calendar. I mean, or you don't have to use Google. I use Google because it's easy. I use Gmail. But if you use whatever calendar system you use, you're gonna set up a system. And the way this works is you're gonna first schedule in events. And I mean events like vacation. So we know we take 2 vacations per year. So we're gonna first book those. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna book date nights. Because that's important, right? Have those date nights with my wife, whatever it is. Then the next one's going to be events, business-based events. Like I know, based on my business, I've got to travel 4 or 5 times a year. So I'm going to book those events. Then I'm going to book everything else in the calendar, which will be my lead generation time, my appointment time, going back to the schedule we created in step 1, where, okay, my day starts at 4:45 a.m., but my business day starts at 8:30 a.m. And then my business day ends at 7 p.m. So now you start to build your calendar. I mean, it's awesome, and here's something really cool. Tell you want someone to keep you accountable. I know you mentioned this earlier, Deb. Talk to, hire a coach or talk, or even if you have kids, tell your kids to keep you accountable. Tell your kids, say, hey, if we're going to go to Disneyland this year, but the only way we're going is if daddy does his job. So every day I need you to ask me if you're doing your job so we can go to Disneyland. I guarantee you.
You load the dishwasher so mommy and daddy can work.
Yeah, right.
And
I
we
love
can have-
that.
Yeah.